be conscious is to be aware of the impact I'm having on others. So if I'm a conscious leader, I'm leading and I'm aware of the impact I'm having on those around me, both the team, the clients, the culture, etc. And the more aware I am of that impact, the more intentional I can be about who I am, how I show up, who I become in the process of leading.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. And we are so fired up. Tracey and I have a very, very exciting, fascinating guest to share with you today. This is our friend Dan Tochini. And yes, that's right. I had practice before I hit record on that one. He has come into us with over 3 decades in the coaching of high-performing leaders space, very similar to myself, which I can't wait to dig into some of the synergies there. And he really is on a mission to dismantle the comfort zones that keep these high-performing leaders and their teams stuck, and to build trust-rich cultures where people actually want to show up and give their best. He's worked with everyone from Fortune 500 executives to founders in the trenches, guiding them through the hard human work of leadership transformation. And that's why we are so fired up to introduce you to our friend Dan today, because he is going to riff on all kinds of aspects of how conscious leadership is showing up on his play. Dan, welcome to the pod, friend.
Well, nice to meet you, Susan. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Tracey. This is a real pleasure. Looking forward to our conversation. So, I'm excited. Thank you.
Let's let it rip, shall we?
Yes.
I think the first place I gotta start, since we were just chatting briefly offline, in and around this new theme here at the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, which is conscious leadership. What does that terminology mean to you, or that concept mean to you, Dan?
Well, to be conscious is the word conscience comes out of that word, and it means really to be conscious is to be aware of the impact I'm having on others. So if I'm a conscious leader, I'm leading and I'm aware of the impact I'm having on those around me, both the team, the clients, the culture, etc. And the more aware I am of that impact, the more intentional I can be about who I am, how I show up, who I become in the process of leading.
Who I become in the process of leading. I definitely want to talk about that. And so would you say that you align with that leadership style over the last 3 decades of all this success that I aforementioned?
Well, yeah, I would say that it's in my experience, it's a goal. I set it up as a standard, and yes, I fall short of it, and I'm reminded of it. I'm married now. I'm with my wife 50 years, and she's very good and she's a partner. She's the VP in charge of coaching. She's brilliant, and she's, when you have someone around you who cares for you, if they really care for you, well, then they're going to say the things that need to be said, even in the face of breaking rapport. And she's been, I would say she's probably my dearest, closest, most reliable partner. And she has made me painfully aware of when I'm not living up to it, and when I am, but I don't think I am. It's like there's a number of ways to play that. My tendency is to question myself often too quickly, too long, or at least too much. But yeah, I would say I am constantly striving to live up to that. I hit the nail on the head. I most recently I missed it pretty drastically, and was, it's like a PhD. You keep earning it, So yeah, I never want to say, well, I've arrived, because I haven't. And at 70, I see there's plenty of room to continue to become who I'm committed to becoming. So,
oh my gosh,
a lot of words to answer that question.
Well, there's just so much to dig into, right? Like you just mentioned that you're 70. So I'm curious if this was your leadership style from the get over 3 decades ago, or if this was informed by something along the way or inspired by something maybe you experienced early on.
It was. It's been 4 decades, actually. My first coaching company was 1982.
Wow. The year
It
I
was
was born.
it was called the coaching company, and it didn't do well because executives didn't quite get it. And I used to go, and I'm an athlete, so I'd go in and say, you know, when these pro teams hire an athlete, they give them two or three coaches to help them improve their game. You're investing, you're making a huge investment in people. Why
Hmm.
aren't you doing that, basically? And it worked with some, but I at the time was a trainer for a company called LifeSpring. I was in the human potential movement. I studied, I worked with guys like Werner Erhard and, Tom Wilhite and so on, multiple different people who kind of really started that industry. And then as a young kid, my mother was a schizophrenic, bipolar, and I became the go-between between she and my mother and the doctors. My dad, he was hiring doctors. My mother's, schizophrenia, bipolar. That is usually it's an aberration of intelligent, very intelligent people. She IQ is extremely high, concert pianist, spoke multiple languages, that kind of thing, and love her dearly. She's dead now. She died about 5 years ago, and I got to be the go-between because they were going to give her a lobotomy, and I talked my dad out of it. I read my first book at 12. It was called Gestalt Therapy Verbatim, and I remember reading it so I could understand how
Wow.
to be with her because if you
Uh-huh.
couldn't cuddle her, you had to talk straight. You had to let her know, that's not going to work with me, that kind of thing. And I would debrief in Ross at Ross General Hospital, and they would bring people in from Esalen like Fritz Perls or Michael Murphy, or And so at a young age, I didn't realize it, but I was being exposed to a lot of just really great thinkers, Carl Rogers, etc. And so I, started feeling my way through that stuff. I went through some trauma. I left home early because of all
Hmm.
this, and walked through a fairly severe cocaine addiction. Been clean now for over 42 years. Really kicked it because my son was born, and my wife again laid it on the line. Look, man, I know what you're up to, and we have a responsibility now. It's either you and me and Danny, or I got to raise them alone, which I don't want to, but I'm not going to play codependent with you anymore. And that was the beginning of my kind of coming to light. I was an angry young man for, you know, I have a saying, we're all criminal, just some of us are more arrestable than others. And we know the criminal side of us, and she spoke right to it to me. And I knew
Wow.
it was, I was a voracious reader through all of this. So my recovery process, I customized it, went to people I could really trust, really got behind the addiction is the symptom. It's the
Hmm.
thinking behind it. And the
Mm.
thinking is criminal. And
Hmm.
as a result, a lot of my side work, a lot of my, kind of, if you will, my giving back has been with kids coming out of gangs, multiple generations. I developed a curriculum run by a ministry called Straight Ahead. It's probably the most researched curriculum in the country. We were able to reverse the recidivism rate with all the organizations we worked with from about 87% down to 12%. And now
Wow.
there's a number of spin-offs that use our curriculum. One of them is called CROP, CROP, in California. They have a 0% recidivism rate over 10
Oh
years.
my gosh, that's unheard of. As
Yeah,
this.
and they track them all the way through. But they put multiple pieces together, and they use our whole approach to leadership and consciousness to support these guys. Because if they can get a hold of the mindset, it can transform into from an enemy to an ally. Because it can inform me when I'm at the edge, and I do that with executives. If executives aren't too full of themselves, they can actually get in touch with the where they're not impacting people the way they could and get a hold of whatever their machinery is that's preventing that and then use it as an ally. I mean, once you really are face to face with it, you can start to listen to it in a way that at least it tells me where I'm insecure or where, because I struggle, we all struggle, I believe, with what I would call a life sentence. You know, I know as a young kid, I thought myself to be a fraud. And for a lot of my life, I lived to prove to other people I wasn't a fraud, rather than live for who I'm committed to being, even in the face of being interpreted as a fraud. But
Hmm.
coming to terms with that, coming face to face with that, was one of the most darkest periods of my life, and still feels dark when it comes up because it's still there. However,
Hmm.
it's a great ally. It tells me where to look and who to ask for help, to ask for some light in the situation. But and I have a pretty good sense when I feel out of control or insecure, like I'm going to be, the four things we're concerned about in our survival: looking good, feeling good, being right, and being in control. And so it's one of the four, or maybe a combination of the four, depending on
Yeah.
how complex the situation is and what's at stake, and then how to
Yeah.
get vulnerable with that and invite people in to support the breakthrough so I can presence myself the way I'm committed to. So I have people around me I can trust like that. I make it a point to do that. My team is set up in a way that we're all about that, and we support each other. We edge each other, to continue to stay on the path of what our commitment's calling us to. I work from principles like things I can that are dynamic because I don't answers don't work, but principles can help me tease apart tensions and put language on distinction, which brings power to a conversation. Right. So, you know, people never make a bad decision. They make the best decision they see available. And so, what causes people to make a decision? So, that's a lot.
Right, Trace? No, we're just both like levitating right now because everything that you're riffing on is what we spend these sessions or episodes talking about, Tracy and
Awesome.
I. Right? And I think where my curiosity wants to lead me, unless Tracy, you got a question there. Do you got
No,
something?
you go ahead. I got one. I'll wait for yours. So go ahead.
No, I'm just curious if this was something that you experientially developed in your own ascension because it was a framework that you needed in order to overcome everything that you just mentioned, were the roadblocks from the get, or if this is actually something that you plugged into in terms of a modality or some type of formal practice.
Mm. I would. It's both, but mainly the driving factors. I love my mother,
Mhm.
and um, when you love somebody,
Hmm.
it's worth. You find out what you got to deal with. So, you know, I've lost friends because I wasn't aware of it, or because I neglected it, even though I was aware of it. And it, those things I like to remember them so that you remind yourself you've never arrived. And because if the minute I think I've arrived, what other relationships go on the chopping block that I'm not aware of because I'm the hubris that I might be operating from. And then when I'm in this place, if I am in a place of listening, my own listening, paying attention to what I'm interpreting as well as what's being said. If I'm there, I can speak truth with love, and I can contain the reactions that are going to come back, and learn from them. And so that's been very helpful. But that's because first I was motivated out of the love I had for my mother, then my wife and my children, and it just mounts my team. And then there are a number of frameworks that I've played with, worked with, taken, derived from great thinkers like Soren Kierkegaard or Martin Heidegger, you know, Blaise Pascal. You can almost all the phenomenologists. C.S. Lewis is a. I'm a C.S. Lewis fan. I train my grandchildren and my children. I trained through them through his writings. He trained me. All of them did. I tell my wife after Jesus, I'm going to meet Soren Kierkegaard and C.S. Lewis. You know, those are they're big for me. And Dostoevsky, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Those are the three
Hmm.
bigs for me. So
And phenomenology you mentioned, I just want to make sure you plug our audience into that because you were telling us about that off air. But what is that phenomenology that you
my
just
background
mentioned?
is I've done a lot of studying in the School of Phenomenology, which is a school of philosophy. In the school there are two. lines of thought, but they use the similar or same language, just with some key assumptions that are distinct. But it means the study of becoming, what it means to become human fully, which is, we're never done doing that. That's for sure.
I know. We believe, in fact, that we're never done, right?
That's right. Practice.
The life school.
Yeah, practice doesn't make perfect. It makes authentic. It makes authentic. Practice makes authentic.
Trace?
Yes.
Trace, you had a question.
Yeah, it's your turn.
I wanted to kind of like understand from you, like, what are some of the things that you practice to, because I think it's important for us to get hints, and that's one of the things that Susan and I explore with some of our guests is how does consciousness show up in their world, and how do they keep themselves aligned with that, right?
Yeah.
So there's different modalities, there's different ways to do that, and I think everybody has their own kind of like practice to do that, and I'd love to hear how you do that, except for your reading, obviously, and I know you're studying and you sound like you're very, very passionate about that, but in your day-to-day, is there other things that keeps you present? What are some of the tips that you could share with us?
Well, the first thing I think of questions to live out of, and one of them is, where, an early question for me was, where does consciousness live? Like, because if you're going to talk about consciousness, it becomes a nominalization, something that you can't define really. But where does it? You can describe it, and it's like trust. You can describe it, but where do you find it? Like, where do you locate these things? And in my world, in the phenomenological world, it's you find it in language, because you don't have consciousness without language. Because language reveals and it conceals, and it reveals what it conceals as well. It shadows what it's concealing.
So good.
And so
true.
Yeah, and Heidegger says language is the house of being. And he's right. I get that. It shows up that way for me, like a dynamic, like a phenomenology. And so if you think about it, people never make a bad choice. They don't ever make a bad choice. They make the best choice they see available. But you don't get up in the morning and go, oh, I'm going to make the second best choice I see available.
Right?
You actually make the best choice. So when you see somebody, you go, well, that's a stupid choice. Well, no, it was the best choice they saw available. The question I ask is, I wonder what mindset made that the best choice they saw available, because that's empathy, right? I can then empathize, which gives me an opening, at least it starts to produce openings to engage them in a meaningful way, right? So that's a principle. I work from principles, like things that are dynamic, because answers don't work. But principles can help me tease apart tensions and put language on distinction, which brings power to a conversation, right? So, people never make a bad decision. They make the best decision they see available. And so what causes people to make a decision? Where does what lives? People act congruently with the way the world occurs for them, right? So if I know that, then I can take on, I wonder what they were thinking. And the next principle is the way the world occurs for people happens in language. And this is all of Heideggerian phenomenological. There's a lot of thinkers. There's a professor at Berkeley that really moved me in my life. His name is Hubert Dreyfus. He's no longer there. Werner Erhard. A lot of those guys they shifted their trainings from, Est to Forum. And there was a bunch of the guys in the human potential movement who made this shift because they saw the power in this. It was much more powerful than the psychological language that's in the culture. So the second one is, the third one is language. The world occurs for people in language. So when I listen to language, when I listen to myself speak or others speak, I can notice I can listen to their predicates to see how they position themselves in relationship to what they're discussing, or what they're engaging. And that's always, see, the relationship I have to you determines what's possible, what I see as possible. Right. And if I want to see a new possibility, then I'm also acquainted with the reality that as we discuss or talk about things, you're probably going to say things to me that are going to occur as a threat, because all new possibility first presents itself as a threat. So can I check it? Can I then contain it long enough to listen to my conversation about it? Because I'll project what I think about it, what I say about it to myself, as if that is what's really there, if I'm not conscious. But consciousness is really the kind of listening your meta conversation, the conversation in the background that brings meaning to the things. I am a context that produces the context that brings meaning to the content that comes into my space or into relationship. When I come into relationship with it, that's what occurs. I don't see it. I don't see you. I see who I think you think I am. And so if I'm connected to that, then I'm going to get really curious about who you think I am, or what you think about whatever's up, rather than just live with that automatic decision I'm making in my head.
The
So
projected reality.
like when I feel insecure about what's going on, then I got to check into who I think you think I am in my own head. And the last principle is that future language transforms current state. So how I think about the future, that's what brings my, like, if I think you think that I'm this or that, and that's going to project a particular future. And that future is I'm going to either feel good about our relationship because of the future I see unfolding in the conversation. I'm automatically assessing that future. Now, if I think I've made a mistake with you and it jeopardizes the future I want to have, or that I think is necessary for my survival, looking good, feeling good, being right, being in control, then I'm going to probably get insecure. All my defense mechanisms, my rackets that are useful in defense, but harmful in creating relationship that's deeper than just an interaction. Probably. I don't want to say that ultimately, because there's probably exceptions, but like that, then if I'm aware of this dynamic, I can inquire into it first in myself and then with others. And I have to check myself, because I often wreck myself, because I tend to be too forthright, blunt. One of the things I constantly check myself on is how, not only do what I know what I want to say, but how can I say it in a way that the other person gets it in a way that opens up a possibility. And I fail radically every day on that. And, it's constant. It's like a plane flying across country. It's a constant adjustment in the relationship. So does that answer your question, Tracey? Does that give you some?
Perfect. And that last piece is so interesting. So I was just having a conversation with a leader today on my team when we were talking about that. One of the most difficult jobs, I think, as a leader, and a space that we continue challenge ourselves, because the work is the work. It's not so hard to do the work. But to be able to influence and to be able to actively listen and understand the motivation and the inspiration that others need, to be able to have them get on board or to move in a direction that we're looking for them to come to, is one of the most difficult and challenging jobs as a leader. And it's something that we have to continuously challenge ourselves with. And it's a learning that you never become perfect at, because every human being is motivated by different things and see things differently. And I always say to my leaders, it's not about telling your people what to do. It's about showing them, and in the language and in the way that they can see the perspective that you are trying to inspire them with, so that they can actually get on board easily, because it's all about influencing as a leader. It's about bringing everybody together in the right direction. It's not about top down, here's what we need to do, step it up, right?
Yeah, and if you've really made that connection when you want to make it's time to exercise a unilateral decision, you're going to have the trust in the organization to do that, and they'll follow, right?
And
Yeah,
the other thing is, for me, I try to make it like something that is fun as a leader. Is it's something that every time you meet a new person or a new person on your team that you're working with, have fun with it.
yeah,
Practice,
right.
enjoy. Don't think of it as, I need to get people going in my direction and pound your fist. And it's like, just kind of like sit back
Be
and like try to
playful.
yeah, and get curious and see how you can do that. And don't put so much pressure on yourself as a leader. Have fun with it, And I think it's
Yeah,
such an important piece because it really changes the dynamic of two people when they understand and they see that you see them and you
yeah,
understand them. It changes the
yeah,
whole recipe, eh?
yeah. And what you said is what it hooks into some of our where we come from, my team and I. And first, when you come on board here, the first thing we talk to people about is, look, the thing that we're going to be curious about, because you don't learn it in, you go through the interview process, and so if we bring you on, we think, oh, okay, we get it, but we're going to find out over the first 90 days, and what we're interested in is how well you manage yourself. That's the first step, because if you don't manage yourself well, you can't lead well. You're going to sabotage yourself, shoot yourself in the foot, in a way that's hard to retrieve. You're gonna, and how you'll know you shoot yourself in the foot is you'll start to blame circumstances, history, or people, and that's the first sign that you're unwilling to connect with what's wanted and needed from you to presence a new possibility. And we have a very meticulous and rigorous, I guess you'd call it a stack of questions, thoughts, uh, ways of listening to chunk down a person's worldview, help them see. Now, the thing about it is it's a painful work, because if you're going to integrate the shadow, to Carl
Mm-hmm.
Jung's, then you got to be willing to look in. We call it hugging the cactus. You've got to be willing to hug the thing you despise most about yourself, because you'll project it onto others, and you won't be able to engage others when they're in that space, or you perceive them in that space in a way that can make it useful or valuable to them in the process. You'll just get pissed off and make them wrong, and they'll blow out, and and it'll get convoluted. They won't ever get the benefit of their own input and their own impact if you're convoluting it with your reaction, right? And so, and that's the part I struggle a lot with, because I'm quick, man. I'm quick to perceive, and and as my wife said, not everything you perceive is accurate, Dan. You might want to check in on some of this, right?
Before you wreck yourself, check
Yeah,
yourself before you wreck yourself.
my wife is constantly she's on my shoulder at all times. So
I love that. I love
I
that.
love her to death. She's a blast.
Oh, you can so feel that love through the mic
Yeah.
when you talk about her.
Well, you should have her on the show. She'd be an experience.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I
Up next
guarantee
on
you.
deck, we got Dan's wife coming in
Well,
next
I'm
week,
telling you,
folks.
man, she is a no nonsense, man,
I
and
love her already from the
got
stories you're sharing.
radar ears. It's actually disturbing. I'll get I know she hears something, because you'll say something. I'm like defensive, pissed off. What do you mean? Why are we talking about this? And then I go, okay, when you get like that, she's on to something, right?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
trust right there, hey?
yeah,
Uh,
that's
as somebody who keeps talking about possibility, and Tracy and I have been talking about consciousness as the portal of possibility,
oh, nice,
and this
nice.
and that thus this is our thesis, is that conscious leadership is what's going to change the way this game's being played. And the game is changing, right, Dan? Look at
Oh,
these future
radically.
generations coming up behind our back shoulder that cannot be led unconsciously. We're parents, we know that. And then AI, which is going to be a bigger disruption than the internet. So as somebody who is an absolute expert and specialist in leading transformation, what is the counsel that you are giving your leaders right now? And do you agree that conscious leadership is how we're going to rewrite this playbook in terms of how this game is about to change.
Well, yeah, you can't change something you're not aware of. So
Mhm.
absolutely. And, you know, I- so I'm a philosopher at heart, if you haven't been able to tell.
We got
And
that.
I'm, there are so many nuances to lead. Like leadership is filled with paradoxes. So you can't define it. And there are, I can name a few paradoxes, but knowing these paradoxes. So if I talk about a paradox, I'm talking about a tension that naturally arises when people get together and their diverse gifts and perspectives engage in a confluence. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have tension.
Hmm.
And so, for instance, here's a simple paradox. Um, frankness. Let's put it on a graph. Frankness on the y-axis, and 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 let's call it,
Ambiguity.
well, let's call it um, what's that? When you're brain fart. When you're good, when you're saying things in a way that they can be heard. You're conscious of. So if you're high on frankness and low on um, empathy, let's just call it empathy, but
Hmm.
but it's more like tact, right?
Mm.
Then you're going to be blunt. So
Hmm.
that, but if you're and if you're high on tact and low on frankness, you're going to be evasive.
Mm.
So you want to balance. You want to be able to be high on frankness and high on tact, so that you can engage in a way that when they're necessary, you can move and you don't get off the point. And a leader's tact is high on tact and low on frankness when they can't believe they've said it so many times and nobody really got it. Well, maybe they didn't say it with the kind of frankness that people would get that this is damn important,
Mm. So
right?
true. Hmm.
And so there's another one too. There's another tension that goes with that is the difference between enforcement and empathy, right? So empathy is I'm connected with you. Compassion. I get what you're up to. I want to support you in it. Enforcement is look. There are certain rules and regulations that are just you got to uphold them, and there's your commitments, etc. So you enforce if you're over on enforcement and low on empathy, or low on compassion, if you will, then what you're going to end up with is you're going to be dominating. you
Yeah.
know and if you're high on compassion and low on enforcement, then you're going to be wishy-washy. You're going to
Country club culture.
That's right.
Hmm.
It'll be run on personality. So just think if you're high on empathy, high on tact, low on frankness, low on enforcement, and high on compassion. Now what you got is that's the beginning of what I call the Bermuda Triangle, where you know projects go in and results don't come out,
Mm.
right? And so it's knowing those tensions, it's easier to zone in on what's wanted and needed, right? There's actually I've identified we have at least 12 that we work with actively with our clients, but that we've identified about 20 of them, and they're natural. You got to have some way to put language on them, so we put them. It's paradoxical. These things they seem like they're not related or that they're opposites, but they're actually interdependent. They're intertwined, and our ability to navigate them has a lot to do with the breadth of and depth that we can communicate with our team.
And then that pertains to my question around conscious leadership being
That's
the thing
right.
that's going to help us change the
You
way the
got to be
game's being played.
conscious about what you're engaging, right? And so if you don't have some framework to put your experience in, you'll lack the words to bring the consciousness of your team up in a way that they can see the way you do. That's why a lot of leaders like, oh, I guess I'm the only one who can do this. Nobody can do it like me. Well, yeah, you're right until you get conscious about what you're like. Usually they're unconscious competence.
Hmm.
I've been like when I get in a training room, I've got 50,000 hours in a training room working with people. I do things that I've had my guys I'm training like, how'd you see that? And then I have to think a long time. I don't know. It's just intuition. Is what I'll say. But no, actually, I'm listening in a very particular way that a long time ago I had to consciously focus on. Now it's automatic, right? So
Mm.
then to get that out in the open is to help them listen the same way. Like you think about, I think about our listening like radar, right? It's listening for things. Radar listens for solid objects. It sends a signal out, comes back, he listens for solid objects. But in order to get radar to be able to help pilots identify wind shear, they had to recalibrate radar so that it would listen to the raindrops, the moisture in the air, so it could tell what the wind was doing. And then that gave pilots the ability to identify wind shear when it was there, right? Well, the same thing's true if I'm really a great performer. I'm listening for certain things that are essential to performing. But if I'm going to lead, and this is what happens, one of the biggest problems in business, you take these performers, you make them managers, and they blow people out because they don't know how to listen or what to listen for as a leader of people. They know how to listen very well as a producer, but not everybody produces the same way. So I've got to really understand how my team, each individual is listening and what they're listening for when they do this. And I can build a narrative that can help them start to tune in to what they may see as a threat, but I know as a possibility, that kind of thing. Like the example, I have a young CEO I'm working with. Guy's brilliant. Oh, love this guy. He's got a paving company. They do about 15. They're going to do about 20 million this year. And he's committed to get to 25 by the end. Probably 25 is, I think, his goal for the end of 2026. And my point to him was, he's got another guy leading with him. They've been very effective. But as I'm listening to him, I can tell his partner doesn't quite. In fact, he notices it. Isn't authentic in certain areas that he knows are necessary. But he's afraid in some ways to confront him because it's the golden goose. But he knows he's got to confront him. So my point to him is, I had to talk with him today. I said, well, what does this guy value? Because he had me listen to this. He sent me a podcast this guy was on, and the guy's brilliant. The guy's savvy. He's the chief of staff, going to be eventually. I think he's going to be the head of sales, etc. And I listened to him, and I said, well, what do you think his values are? And he said, well, money and recognition. I said, close. I think it's status and recognition. Money represents status. I'll bet he has a hard time financially. He goes, how'd you know? I goes, because if money is status, he's going to spend his money to get status, and he's going to always be check to check. He goes, and it dropped him, right? I said, if you know that, and I said, now, the other thing, he's going to resist everything you tell him at first, but he'll be grateful if he breaks through. How'd you know that? I said, because money, status, and recognition. If you put him into a new environment, he's afraid he can't succeed. He'll lose his recognition and status. So you've got to kind of, in a way, help him see that you're there with him, et cetera, that and you're going to be honest, straightforward with him, but that you're not going to, you got his back. And got his back means you're going to give him the feedback most people don't, so that he can get good at this right away. But he's going to resist it first. So, I mean, those are things that after you work for a long time, they become second nature. But you got to really slow down and listen. Listen to what I'm listening to what they're listening, what's their, I write a lot of what people tell me. If I'm working with them, I'll write it. What are you doing? I'm putting everything in writing. Why? Because I want to see your words. I want to understand what you're seeing. And if I see your words, I can, okay, why do you say this? What's that about? How, like that. So.
Yeah, I think that's why we believe that consciousness in the context of leadership development holds the power in this portal of possibility to change the game, because that's where new choice comes from, is when you can actually show up as your whole self, fully available to whatever it is that's happening right in front of you, and then you can actually make new choice. But you're right, that awareness simply has to happen before intelligent choice can ever take place, right?
And the beautiful thing is, you've got the language you got's beautiful, but it's so high level. People go, oh yeah, and then they don't know what to listen for. They don't. That's why I'm breaking it, chunking it down, because if you're gonna, and by the way, this is work. That's why I have a training called the Revenant Process. It's a 4-day intensive leadership training our clients tend to send their leadership to. And this is the kind of thing that we exercise for 4 days in the intensive. And when people come out, their ears are sharp. And but the thing is, it's not like you arrive. So people get out, they go out and do well. I've had people write back. Well, I notice now I'm falling back. Well, yes, this is a
Practice.
learns. You have to, if you don't practice, you lose it. And you need to surround yourself. So at first, you got to get people around you that really get this and are going to work it with you, and then help you get your team around that. That's what we do.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. Dan, we're going to have you come back because you are
Please.
a well of conscious leadership expertise, and the stories that you're sharing with us for sure are the best part. I want to give you the opportunity, if anybody is curious to explore your 4-day leadership retreat or anything else that you just mentioned in terms of how you're leading the charge with your leaders in terms of their conscious leadership, where would you like them to find you?
They would find us at takenewground.com. And on there, if you scroll down, there's a free book, ebook I wrote called The Change Imperative. You can take that. The Revenant's on there under public offerings, because we have two public offerings. One is The Revenant, the other one's Intrepid, which is a leadership academy. And that's a 60-day program where we actually work with people, coaching people, because leadership's causing results through people. And you can find all that there. That the next training is October 2nd through the 5th. I don't know if this will be out by then.
Oh
but
yeah, we'll
but
make sure.
and then we probably have enough. We do about 3 a year, maybe 4 if we're really on it, but 3 a year is average. And we do them here in Boise. Sometimes we'll go to Hawaii and do them, or in LA, but we've been pretty much in Boise because I live here and I'm 70 years old. And my partner trains with me, and my wife does, and my daughter, but they all come with me. My daughter's a phenomenal coach, so is my wife. And my partner is as well. My wife trained my partner years ago. So anyway, that's what we do. And we'd love to see you in there. We have a blast. It's intense, but it's unbelievable. We did a survey of 1,000 participants over the years, and 97% of them put it in the top 3 experiences of their life. So yeah, that blew my mind. I thought, hey, if we hit the 75 percentile, we're good. And when it came back, I was like, oh man, this is beautiful. We got to use this on the website. So
Dan is definitely playing his biggest impact game. I love it. We're gonna have to have your daughter and your wife come
yes.
in
Oh,
next time.
I promise you it'll be engaging. Promise you your listeners will be engaged.
We feel that and we resonate with that just based on the energy in which you're communicating it. So we'll definitely extend the invite to them next. And we'll have to have you back down the line for part 2.
Please,
In the
please.
meantime, we will make sure everything you just mentioned is listed in the show notes. Tracey, do you have any final words for our friend Dan?
Oh, I think it was so fun, Dan, and I'm so inspired by what you're doing and what you have been doing for so long, and still at 70 still going strong. I'm so inspired by that, and I hope that I can be on that same wave as you are at that age. So good for you, and thanks for coming on. It was super enlightening. I'm so glad to see you doing all this work in the world that's going to help us change and just be on the same mission we're on. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Susan. Keep kicking at the indifference, man, till it bleeds life. So
Oh my goodness. I swear I want to keep flowing with this conversation, but I know we got to go. So
I get it. I'm with you. Go get it out of here.
I got to land this plane. And the place we're going to land it, aside from our attitude of gratitude for Dan, is our attitude of gratitude for you, our audience. You are the inspiration behind this all for us. We are in the year of co-creation, and that means that we really want to hear your feedback in terms of how this new concept of conscious leadership is landing in your lane. If there are any other guests or concepts you want us to dig deeply into, you can send me an email directly, susan@elitehighperformance.com. For all other curiosity in terms of how you can get on this track, we're calling it a journey today because it's that gift that keeps on giving. It's the training that never ends, and that's why we call our leadership development programming, The Locker Room. I know as a former athlete, Dan is resonating with that. But if you are also resonating with that, please head on over to the website, elitehighperformance.com, where you can find out everything about our offerings there. Please hit like and subscribe on your way out these locker room doors today, and share this episode as far and wide as you can to help us amplify our impact game, as we are seriously committed to changing the way this game is being played through conscious leadership. That's it. That's all for this week. We'll see you all back here next time.